And we are live. You're watching Interchain FM as part of the Interchain Jam series. If you're seeking alpha in the cosmos, look no further. I'm your host, Django Unchained. If you're new to the Interchain Jam, this is the home where we highlight the people behind your favorite app chains. These episodes are streamed every single Thursday, so be here and check out the Cosmos Twitter channel for all of our latest updates. We changed this from a bi-weekly stream to a weekly stream just because there's so much demand. There's so many projects launching despite it being a bear market. So that's a bullish signal right there. Before we get started, if you enjoy this content and regularly tune in, I would greatly appreciate it if you delegated with Interchain FM. We are on the Cosmos Hub, Osmosis, Umi, Comdex, and Canto. It helps us bring you the highest signal week after week. So enough about that. We're going to welcome our guests. We're here with leads at the Shade Protocol, Mike and Carter. Mike, will you do us the honors of kicking us off with your intro?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Mike. I'm head of product at Shade Protocol. Been working here for, I've been working with Carter and the team for about a year and a half now, a little bit over, and really excited to be here right now. Carter is one of our co-founders, so he can give us a great introduction of the kind of the progress that we've made, some of the new things happening with Shade Protocol, and just catching everyone up to speed today.
Carter, as the co-founder, how did you start Shade and how did you get into Cosmos and why did you decide Secret Network was the right app chain to launch this on?
100%. It's a great question. So I've been in crypto since 2017. The first 3 years of my journey was being wrote a book. So I spent 3 years writing and researching crypto and blockchain. Most of the material out there was either way too finance focused or way too blockchain focused. And it was during that 3 years of deep diving the space that it became super apparent to me that DeFi was lacking privacy, right? You have totally transparent ledgers. You have lending positions that are vulnerable. You have trading strategies that are being copied, front running, which is now a $10 billion plus problem with all this total transparency. So I wanted to find a tech stack where private DeFi can actually happen, where builders could have granular control over what is and isn't encrypted. And that's where I found Secret Network in 2020 and 2021. I actually wrote the Secret Network white paper working with the core developers over at Secret Labs. And then, in 2021, 2022, decided to pull together a team and actually prove out this private DeFi thesis. And Shade Protocol at this point has been building for over 2 years. Last month, we launched our flagship product, Silk, which is a privacy-preserving stablecoin pegged to a basket of global currencies and commodities. We launched ShadeSwap, which supports stable swaps, derivative swaps, as well as your classical constant product trading. We've also launched Shade Lend, which allows people to lock up their assets and mint out Silk. We've seen over 5.5 million in TVL in less than a month on that. ShadeSwap has over 7.5 million in TVL. So north of 13 million in TVL in less than a month. It's been awesome growth. And we're just excited to kind of talk about the values of Shade Protocol and why we think Cosmos needs private DeFi. And we love IBC. We love the Cosmos Hub and we love CosmWasm. And it's a great space to be in.
Excellent. Help me understand how the privacy preserving aspects of Secret's secure enclave helps ShadeSwap implement better features like MEV resistance, and how does that compare to the way that Skip or Flashbots does it with democratizing MEV profits?
Gotcha. So essentially the compute transactions on Secret Network are encrypted. So when transactions are submitted, even if someone's parsing through and trying to figure out, how big is a trade going to be or where is a transaction going to go, that's encrypted. So MEV is essentially stopped by default because the information that you would need to formulate a front-running attack or a sandwich attack isn't even available for anyone, right? And if you compare that to something like Skip Protocol and kind of democratizing MEV, they're kind of ceding to the fact that front-running sandwich attacks are going to happen, and how can we try to give value back to kind of the user that's participating. And from our perspective, it's like, why allow for extraction in the first place, right? If we can instead just have these private compute transactions. It actually ends up saving a lot of money. There doesn't have to be a middleman that's being paid a fee to try to help, mitigate the MEV, so to speak.
Got it. Is it fair to say that Shade Protocol is categorically a privacy coin?
I'll let Mike take this one if you want to.
Yeah, so I guess you could say that it is a privacy coin because yes, it is. Everything that is built on top of Secret Network, like Carter said, is actually inherits that privacy feature. But Shade Protocol itself is a lot larger than just privacy coins. But yeah, I think we're gonna dive into that soon.
Yeah, of course. The only reason why we do the mental gymnastics is because if the SEC comes after you, there seems to be a war on privacy coins at least. So, if this is a privacy coin project, how do you navigate the choppy waters that the SEC is creating for you?
100%. I would say there's really two pieces of the puzzle. One is that, while the home base for Shade Protocol is private, I would say it's really interesting that IBC actually allows all these assets to be public too, right? So you can bridge out Silk, you can bridge out Shade outside of Secret Network, and you'll be able to use them anywhere else in DeFi. And that's actually a huge part of our growth strategy. We care about the pluralism of privacy solutions, the pluralism of total transparency, and it's up to like end users to really find where they lie on that spectrum. And then in terms of on the privacy side, Secret Network is really well positioned with viewing keys and permits for users to be able to decrypt their transactions. There's actually an app called Crypto Clerk that allows people to submit like their tax reporting from their Secret Network transactions. And the tooling's improved a lot since 2021 and 2022, but Secret Network's not claiming to be a black box that doesn't have a path to compliance and auditability. And you're 100% right, though. It's a challenge. Privacy, there's a lot of misalignment in terms of education, I think, from our industry around privacy. And part of that is, I think, Monero was really the starting point for privacy. But we need some degree of data privacy controls in there somewhere. It can't be a total black box. We probably don't want blockchain to be 100% transparent for every single blockchain that's ever existed. We need a pluralism of solutions, and we think Shade Protocol is well positioned to lie somewhere on the spectrum, and hopefully regulators can define good frameworks, and we'll go from there.
It's one of those things where the regulation itself may not directly attack you, but more compel the on-ramps onto your protocol to be more constrained or maybe conservative with supporting your protocol. Like, for example, like Zcash, Monero, there's a lot of if exchanges are worried that it could be categorized as security, they may preemptively delist those tokens, right? So then, as like a DeFi protocol that's privacy preserving, you may need to be an island, so to speak, or right, like the exchanges may just cut off the on ramps with even like a hint of like SEC coming down on it.
That's a fair concern. I think a lot of the ways that we see it here is essentially, in order for blockchain technologies, Web3 technologies to progress and just have actual mass scale adoption, you're going to need this privacy. So there's I think a very strong difference between just having a transactional private coin compared to having a suite of just applications that are programmatically private, right? Like these are encrypted. It is then performed computations on, and then it leaves encrypted, right? So everything here is stuff that is helping the end user. But needless to say, we are also aware of these concerns like you're mentioning. And that's where Secret Network is really so, novel in its use cases, where you do have the modular control of your data. So like as an end user, you are able to say, hey, I want to show this person this data, and only I can give permission for that. So that's something really unique, I think, just in the web in general, that we've kind of gotten to a point here with Secret Network, particularly, where end users now kind of are getting back some of that control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things where, if the ShadeSwap, for example, seeks to disintermediate the centralized exchanges, then you don't necessarily need to leverage them as on-ramps, but it does take you a lot longer for mass adoption to take hold, right? Instead of an accelerated pace, it could be much longer than that.
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting journey just because to date everyone's been focused on transactional privacy, and Shade Protocol is one of the first ever like actual DeFi suites, right? You essentially have MakerDAO but with privacy. You have Uniswap but with total front running resistance and protected trading strategies. So we're seeing a lot of growth quick. I mean, 15 million in TVL in less than a month is, I think, very impressive for a private DeFi suite with encrypted smart contracts. And to your point, yeah, growth might be slower, but we think there's a very strong case for people that don't want their liquidation price points publicly visible, don't want their trading balances publicly visible. These aren't malicious actors. These are traders and power DeFi users that want to protect their positions and want to protect their alpha, so to speak. And there's honestly, like, Web 2 finance has a lot more privacy than Web 3 finance right now, right? Like, this Web 3 paradigm has been like, if you're even 1% private, then surely it's something bad or not good. And it's like, no. Like, there is financial privacy in a very big way in Web 2 commerce and in Web 2 finance. So we're just trying to bring parity to that paradigm. And in fairness to like some of these 3-letter agencies, like, they are concerned about nefarious actors, and that's completely fair, right? Like, that's a challenge, and the onus is on them to figure out good frameworks to try to handle people that are genuinely trying to use privacy technology for good purposes versus people that are using it for the wrong reasons. And ultimately, like, it's our job as builders to build out the tooling to allow for that plurality. And yeah, that would be my answer. It's an education problem and it's a tooling problem, and we're here to help solve both.
Yeah, I certainly take the opposite end of the stance, and am not a Fed apologist to say that. I think the way that they're coming at the industry is, they're trying to capture one porpoise in the sea with the widest net possible, and then it catches everything else. It catches all the whales, it catches everything, and then just to catch one thing. So I think it's been an interesting model.
Regulation by enforcement is always far worse than regulation via legislation that then gets enacted, right? So I'm with you there. Like, I guess what I'm describing is legislation and regulation when it's done in good faith. That's we would aspire to be able to fit into that. Right now, I think it's a whole separate discussion about, like, if the 3-letter agencies, if they're doing it the right way, if it's anti-innovation. And I'm guessing via our stance on privacy, you could probably infer how we would feel about the current way that things are being approached. But
right. I mean, it seems as if this is happening to at least the decentralized protocols to make way for something that they want to launch, like FedNow, or the digital Hong Kong dollar, or the digital yuan, the government coins. What's your take on that? And given that you guys have a Silk stable token that is based on a basket of assets, would that potentially include such gov coins?
yeah, Mike, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I guess at the root of it, you're asking, like, in the future, as new assets come out, is this going to affect Shade Protocol's assets? And the answer is, like, yeah, for sure. But in the sense that you're saying, like, do we have some of these more centralized assets now being used within Shade Protocol, or necessarily, like you're saying, pointing out Silk, the stablecoin? That's really up to governance. So at the end of the day, we can advocate for, I'm assuming you're going to know our position, which is, I'll let that be there, but we could advocate for that. But at the end of the day, it's really up to governance to decide how Silk is actually going to be pegged. And that goes really with Shade Protocol overall.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's the really interesting thing about Silk is the basket and the weights are capable of evolving over time, and governance will ultimately have control over that. There has been a plan that was outlined called Operation like Touch and Go, which is essentially like a 5-year plan to ensure that Silk is 100% decentralized collateral by year 5 type of a deal. So we're very cognizant of the risks of centralized collateral, and basket wise, I think it's really going to be up to community and the researchers to want to, continue for Silk to evolve into this asset that's globally stable and representative of global productivity and is able to be, we like to think of it as like the interoperability hub between global currencies. That's what we would aspire for Silk to be. And yeah, we'll see how governance evolves the basket over time.
Yeah, I mean, what would you imagine the future to look like if most of the decentralized assets are pushed to the periphery via regulation, and what's taking hold front and center is these gov coins, which do tend to be representative of the GDPs of whatever local jurisdiction that that they're currency for.
The interesting thing about Silk is that what's backing Silk is different than what it's tracking, right? Silk could be one day be 100% Bitcoin backed. Right now, it's backed by things like Secret and things like Atom, and we're going to be expanding the list to include things like ETH and gold and other pieces, right? So there's what backs Silk, and then there's what the peg slowly tracks over time and what all the stability mechanisms follow. So there can be Fed coin A, B, and C across the entire world, but we don't have to have those assets actually back Silk, but we can still tap into the benefits of how stable those assets are. So Silk is it was designed to be the most resilient and capable of evolving stablecoin that's ever been made, right? All these other decentralized stablecoins, they're pegged to the US dollar, maybe they're pegged to the euro. They don't have the ability to change and evolve over time. But Silk is capable of reacting. Like if the US dollar hyperinflates, the US dollar portion of what's being tracked can be decreased over time. And that weightage could be assigned to Bitcoin. Silk could end up being 80% Bitcoin, 20% gold. It's a completely flexible asset in terms of how it's able to evolve. And that is truly revolutionary. So to your point, in an adversarial environment, how does Silk perform? The answer is as well as governance is capable of evolving it.
Okay, so if Silk is a reflexive stable coin, what is it pegged to? Itself?
No. So actually, Mike, do you wanna pull up the app and read off the weights here? I'll let Mike pull this up quick.
Yeah, for sure. You want me to share my screen, or you just read them off?
If we can share a screen, I honestly that'd be beautiful. Is that okay if he shares a screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And who are your current users of Silk and the ShadeSwap DEX?
So currently, Silk's actually the largest decentralized stablecoin in Cosmos right now. So there's over 3 million Silk in circulation, and there are people that are fans of the privacy of Silk. They're a fan of the peg that it solely tracks over time. And yeah, we're continuing to see the demand for Silk. The users are mostly privacy advocates and mostly people that don't want to hold something that's only pegged to the US dollar.
So yeah, I hope you don't take this the wrong way because I'm asking it so directly, but if Shade Protocol has every aspect of Uniswap's features, but with privacy built in, why hasn't it overtaken Uniswap's dominance in the market?
I would say probably because it's only been live for 4 weeks. We would of course love to aspire to have that level of TVL. So I think if we circle back with this interview in 2 years, I think we'll be in a much different position in terms of TVL. So we will patiently see the growth continue.
Materially, what is different about the UX of using Shade Protocol versus Uniswap? I mean, do you have all of the same features and then some? Or, are certain things different, like time to finality? Maybe your asymmetric concentrated liquidity is actually different from Uniswap v3. How is it materially different?
Sure. Maybe Mike, you could give like a tutorial of the app all the way from the bridge to the swap page to the borrow page, and maybe walk through all the products that have been launched, and maybe talk about some of their differences or not differences, right? Some of these pieces are probably very similar to other products out there.
All right, we're giving a live demo, guys.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a great question, right? Because you're pretty much asking like, what at the end of the day, after all of the, everything everyone's saying, what is the actual differences?
Yeah, I want to know the real differences, not just what you're trying to market to me, like what you're saying to me.
For sure. And what you're getting at is something that us at Shade Protocol, at Secure Secrets rather, really think about all the time. And that is, what are the possibilities that come about when you have interconnected applications, right? When you have applications not only living on the same exact UI, UX, but applications that on the actual contract level can interact with each other in ways where other protocols that have a divergence of applications and tokens cannot do. So if you get to Shade Protocol, one thing immediately is clearly it is built on Secret Network, which is in the Cosmos ecosystem. So one thing that we want people at Shade Protocol to do is essentially really never have to leave Shade Protocol, right? We want people to get to the app and be able to do their finances as they wish. So if you get to the bridge, we don't want an experience similar to like Osmosis and other bridges in the Cosmos ecosystem, which are essentially to and from. I want to deposit assets onto this blockchain and I want to send assets out of this blockchain. We want something more generalized. Again, this is something that we want people in the Cosmos, people in DeFi to use in general. So this here is a bridge. You could choose any chain essentially in the Cosmos ecosystem and send it to another chain. So it doesn't necessarily have to come to Secret Network. However, of course, we want people to come to Secret Network. As you come to Secret Network and you land right here on Shade, app.shadeprotocol.io, you're able to go over to ShadeSwap, which essentially is just a decentralized exchange.
Hold on, can we go back to the bridge portion? So what is the purpose of Shade having this bridge navigation if a user just wants to use it to send from Cosmos to another app chain, like Osmosis or something, and then they don't actually land in Shade Protocol?
Yeah, that's something that we've thought about, and that's something that we want to empower, right? We don't want people to have to worry about hopping from one UI to another UI to another UI to essentially do something that they could do in one place. So regardless if this is actually bringing people to Shade Protocol, this is a public good that users are now able to use within the Cosmos ecosystem and beyond at this point.
It's essentially the bridging is the first part of every user story. And so this is like a fully blown generalized IBC bridge interface. It's one of the most flexible in all of Cosmos right now. And of course, like for people that want to come use Shade Protocol, they're going to be bridging into Secret. And we've actually worked on seamlessly onboarding people from having public assets into kind of the privacy preserving version of their assets. So yeah, this bridge has been a lot of work put into this piece. And once a user bridges in, then you immediately have access to using your assets on the swap page, the borrow page, bonds, staking derivatives. And our end goal is that we're really kind of like an interchain app. You can bridge anywhere. Your portfolio eventually will tell you like where your assets are throughout the Cosmos. We're not there yet. And then when you actually want to perform DeFi activity, it's very easy to interact with the Shade apps.
Hold on. Something interesting popped up. So if someone were to want to obfuscate their transactions, would they then bridge from whatever chain that they came from to Secret, do some swap or whatever, and then bridge back out? And then it would effectively behave like a coin join?
So that is not the purpose of this bridge. However,
But they can do that.
That is a very creative.
Great. That's good to know.
Creative use of the.
That's amazing. Wow. That is a great utility.
Yeah, so that's just the entrance into Shade Protocol. So one of the, I'm not sure, Django, if you've actually used Secret Network before in the past, how much you've used it, but it's always had over the, I would say probably like the last year and a half or so, just UX friction issues. Essentially, like you said earlier, like why hasn't Shade Protocol essentially like popped off yet, or why haven't, you know, Secret Network in its sense, you know, gained as much, you know, attraction as we would like. And really the answer is that the user experience when you introduce privacy in blockchain becomes pretty wacky. And that's one of the things that at every single step of the journey for Shade Protocol is something we have to work on. And one of the beautiful things, like we mentioned earlier, is something like viewing keys, and having an asset that is brought from another chain over into Secret Network onto Shade Protocol. And like you said, be wrapped and obfuscated, right? And that process used to have to be numerous transactions going from another website to another website to another website. All of that now is done just through this bridge. So when you bridge assets over, it is done, boom, right there, right? So that user experience is just checks off all those boxes. So that's just one thing I wanted to point out there before I move forward with the rest of the app. But I could also stop here if you want.
So I'm sure Shade Protocol has properly abstracted away the complexities of using a privacy preserving layer 1, right? So, I mean, you could do all of this in one interface, which is what you're going to show us right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So the next, you know, I guess step in the process, I guess you could really say, like, what would you be interested in doing? Do you want to
make a swap? Make a swap.
If you just brought some assets over. Let's see if I have.
Well, let's go down the list. You know, what's currently listed. What are the options?
Yeah, for sure. So right now,
okay, let's assume we come from Atom, Cosmos Hub, right? Probably, you know, Cosmos Hub or Osmosis, the most used chains, and then let's see what we could swap into.
Yeah, so you could swap into essentially SD Atom, which is the beauty of asymmetric concentrated liquidity is we are able to tailor it for specific asset types.
And can you break that down, please? What does that mean?
Yeah, no problem. So this is this is good. So asymmetric liquidity essentially allows both ends of a pricing curve to be controlled independently. So to kind of give some context on all of that mumbo jumbo, I guess for anyone listening that is just confused with, you know, what is asymmetric liquidity or what is like an AMM model. In DeFi, clearly there's no centralized entity facilitating trades like a centralized exchange. So these DEXs have to use these unique mathematical formulas to pretty much say, hey, given this asset, given the supply and demand of this asset, what is the price going to be, right? There needs to be some type of pricing curve.
And that's the AMM model as opposed to order books.
Exactly, yeah. So these decentralized exchanges use AMM models, automated market makers. And really the first, I would say, leader of this is Uniswap. And they brought something called a constant product market maker. Now this AMM model, which is the constant product model, essentially says that if you take the quantities of the assets of the tokens that are in this liquidity pool and you multiply them by each other, that will always remain constant. So there's a formula where it's like X, which is the quantity of one asset, times Y, which is the quantity of the other asset, must always equal K. And if you plot this on a graph, you get this bonding curve, this pricing curve, which is essentially just all of the allowed pool sizes for this for this liquidity pool. And the constant product market maker that Uniswap brought over was really great. It is still very great for volatile tokens specifically, because it essentially says that, hey, since these assets will always, the product of these assets must always be the same, that essentially says there will be infinite amount of liquidity in a liquidity pool at any given point. So this is really important because if you're a liquidity provider, you don't have that risk of losing your funds. Your funds are pretty much infinite based on this mathematical formula. And if you look at the curve as it goes like this, the actual tail ends of the curve represent essentially price impact, which is, some people refer to as slippage, but it's really known as price impact, which essentially is the trader's cost that they're paying to a liquidity provider for disrupting the pool ratio. So what I mean by that is essentially, if you have a very large trade compared to the pool size, you're going to get hit with a very high price impact, which is essentially just protection for liquidity providers. So I'll stop there before continuing forward if you want any questions on the constant product, but that's just one AMM model. If you now look at another AMM model, which is something called like the constant sum market maker. And this is one that's essentially more conceptual rather than actually being used in application. But instead of being X times Y equals K, it is X plus Y equals K. It's the sum. And what this means is that when you have a trade that is, when someone comes to the liquidity pool and swaps their assets, it's essentially 1-for-1, meaning that there is no price impact. So this particular use case is really good for assets that are not volatile, right? For assets that are stable, like stable coins, or they're relatively pegged to the same thing, like staking derivatives. And if you look at another AMM model like Curve Finance, Curve V2, they essentially do a hybrid of this. They take the benefits that the price impact protection has for liquidity providers from the constant product, and they also take that very low price impact, if not none, of the constant sum for stable assets, and they combine it together. And now Curve V2 really was like the leaders of pushing this type of hybrid model. But the actual restriction that they have, it's an actual mathematical restriction, is that the curve that they have, if you imagine this parabolic, hyperbolic shape, if you were to just split it right in the middle and take a dot right in the middle, it's called essentially your equilibrium point or your origination point. And this is essentially when the pool gets set up. This means it's a balanced pool. And as Curve V2 starts to expand the flatness of this dedicated area for concentrated liquidity, they have to do it simultaneously in unison, meaning it's symmetrically getting expanded on both sides of that origination point. So meaning if you have $50 million worth of liquidity that is being concentrated in this area and you want to expand it, you have to expand it on both sides. Meaning if you even just wanted to have it a little bit here concentrated above the equilibrium point, well, you can't do that. You have to still provide some on both sides. Now, this is different than ShadeSwap's automated market maker model, which is, we called it Silk Swap. And essentially, this is Curve V2, but it has asymmetric control, meaning that you don't have to actually have that restriction of having to provide concentrated liquidity on both sides of that origination point. Instead, you can choose to provide concentrated liquidity to any side of it. And essentially that just means that we are now able to, Shade Protocol is now able to choose when and where they want price impact to occur and how like what's the magnitude of that price impact.
And I'll just to go really high level, the advantage of this is staking derivatives to L1 tokens have a very specific like trading range. And if you compare it to like stable coins that are both pegged to the US dollar, those trade in what we call like it's a symmetrical order flow between the two because they're both pegged to the same thing. But staking derivatives and their underlying L1 tokens, like it's not a symmetrical order flow because a staking derivative slowly increases in value. And so the net result is that there's actually kind of this asymmetric order flow. And so we designed a curve specifically for the relationship between something like Atom to ST Atom, right? And so if you like Mike just punch in like $100,000 trade here, it's incredibly efficient. It's a curve that perfectly maps onto the relationship between L1 tokens and staking derivatives. And what everyone else is trying to do right now is they're trying to use a curve that was designed for stable coins, and they're trying to map that onto the L1 to staking derivative relationship. But that's not actually a perfect match. It's not a perfect fit because there's the assets and their price behavior is different when you're looking at staking derivatives. So this is like a crypto first. There was a PhD mathematics that worked on this for well over half a year. And this is like the first ever implementation of asymmetric concentrated liquidity. So not only are you getting front running resistance, but like Shade Protocol also prides itself on actually innovating on the DeFi side of things too. So you can see there that there's incredibly low slippage on a trade that large. And what will be really cool is when Mike jumps to the pools page after this, because this level of efficiency is on only approximately $550,000 worth of liquidity. You're getting a trade that efficient and that good. And that you can't find that anywhere else in crypto right now.
Yeah, and to add just a little bit more just data on that, like currently right now, like Carter mentioned, comparing this ShadeSwap's concentrated liquidity compared to, let's just say, Osmosis, who has pretty much the liquidity hub in the Cosmos, for this exact trade size, which is about 20% of the actual pool size, we are 33 times less liquidity. There's 33 times less liquidity in this pool, yet 100 times more efficient trades than on Osmosis. Meaning if you did this exact trade on Osmosis, you would have about 25% price impact.
With Osmosis V16 with CL being shipped, how would that differ then?
Yes, it starts. So that's actually a very important shipping for Osmosis. That's going to be a key pivot point in the Osmosis story. They should be able to improve that slippage situation. And we're definitely excited to see that get shipped. It's going to be a huge feature for them. But yeah, of right now,
at that point, would it have parity with the optimizations that you guys have made for StableSwap?
Shouldn't
asymmetric concentrated liquidity?
It becomes very interesting because they're essentially going to be reliant on users to be smart enough to pick trading ranges. So there's going to be some significant UI UX friction to trying to like perfectly map onto this region versus this curve makes it the liquidity provider experience very simple. It's going to be like a one-click provide experience for us. I'm guessing Osmosis, there's going to be a lot more complexity to it. So at that point, it'll become much more about user experience. So.
Got it. All right, let's execute this trade. It says insufficient balance.
Oh man,
you don't have $100,000 of Atom on you.
I don't have $100,000 of Atom on me.
So are we in prod right now, or are we in?
This is production. Yeah, this is on a. Let's see if I have. Let's see. So this is another beautiful thing. If I want to go find, see just some more of my assets, I'll come over to the portfolio page. Because this is a live demo, I want to grab some, let's see, I have some S-Secret. So let's say I want to bring S-Secret to Atom. Atom.
Show some routing. Yeah. Might as well show some routing.
Right. So we can make this trade happen here.
Okay, so it looks like Silk is an intermediary token. Why is that?
Yes, so Silk is essentially we put Silk as a stable coin as the centerpiece of the DEX. A lot of other decentralized exchanges kind of put a volatile governance token as the baseline liquidity token. You're forced to buy this volatile asset and you're forced to kind of liquidity provide with this volatile asset. So there's additional impermanence loss risk. But instead, when you have a stable coin as the centerpiece, it's a lot safer for liquidity providers because there's less potential for impermanence loss. So at the end of the day, it's cheaper for the protocol to incentivize these stable coin pools when Silk is at the center. We also benefit from this too because Shade Protocol, there's interest fees tied to Silk over time. That's not quite implemented yet. So kind of every Silk in circulation also represents a revenue stream back to the protocol. So there's kind of dual benefits there.
Mm-hmm. So you've got the Silk treasuries return.
Yes, in essence, which Mike, maybe you want to go to, well, let's show the pools page quick and then we can jump over to the borrow page as well.
For sure. So this is going to be the pools page, which is essentially pretty similar to any other pools page. However, here you can see the outlined pools are StableSwap pools. A lot of our Shade Protocol's mission is essentially to onboard other partners into the ecosystem as well. So a lot of our partners are with Stride and staking derivative teams. Today, we're actually going live with Persistence, bringing more staking derivatives over. If you come over to, let's say here, you'll notice something that's a little bit different compared to other public blockchains. So for the first time that you come over to Seco Network, you're essentially, like we mentioned before, going to have to create like a viewing key because you are in control of your data. So for instance, here, when you first get to this pools page, really the only other friction you're doing is one extra click here to create a viewing key for this pool.
Because essentially your data for your token balance is encrypted on chain. So not even no one else can see it, but you actually can't see it either until you kind of create this viewing key primitive that allows you to view your encrypted balances. You'll also notice that we support single-sided liquidity providing. A lot of DEXs like to hide like the single-sided liquidity providing, but we make it very easy for a user to come in with one asset and have that begin liquidity providing on the pool.
Exactly. And you could also withdraw to single-sided as well. So if you're in a rush and you're withdrawing and you don't want to take that extra second to go over to, in this scenario, another tab, which would just be the swap tab to convert your assets into another asset. Whereas on another application, you might have to go to another website in order to do so. Here, it'll just do it on the back end. So if you want to just withdraw your liquidity to Silk, if you want to do USDC, etc., you could do that as well from one click.
Let's go ahead and quickly show. I'll go for it.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, let's just quickly show dashboard. Spend like 10 seconds there, and then borrow page is probably the most interesting page recently, just because we've seen a lot of usage of it. So
yeah, for sure. So this is the dashboard page. Essentially, here you could find your top movers, top moving tokens, as well as the top liquidity pools. You could filter this as needed, and this all relates exactly to this pools page as well as the swap interface.
Are you only supporting Cosmos native assets, or are there also bridged EVM tokens?
Leak the alpha, Mike. Might as well.
Yeah, so we actually are supporting outside of Cosmos assets. So essentially, here you can see that we have USDT and USDC through Axelar. And we are now adding onto our bridge, which is essentially ready. I've seen it in production. I believe Carter has as well. And it is now having pretty much from the Shade website being able to bridge over EVM assets over to Shade protocol. So yeah, this list of pools and assets that are going to be supported is definitely going to expand. And I wish I could leak a little bit more alpha, but I'll leave it there for now.
I see that you had CMST listed, Comdex's composite stable token. How is Silk different from that? And how, I'm going to ask you, how does it compare with IST, Agoric's stable token? And just give me an idea about how it's different from Frax and a lot of the other stable coins in the ecosystem.
Yeah, Carter, if you want to take that one.
Sure. So the biggest difference right out of the gates is the peg. CMST, IST, Frax, DAI, all of these are tracking the US dollar, versus Silk's peg is dynamic, which is kind of one of the world's first in crypto on that front. And then the other piece of the puzzle is that
I think so Rye is pretty dynamic too.
Yes, Rye is another one. Nuon is another one. So I think I would say Silk, Nuon, and Rye are kind of like three really interesting experiments between the three of them. Yeah, Silk's basket is more focused on stability of it over time compared to a lot of these other assets. Nuon's more focused on trying to have an asset that's just counteracting inflation, but there's some challenges to that, because anytime you like mint out a stable coin from these borrowing products, it's technically a piece of debt, right? Because you can't unlock your over collateralized loan until you pay off the stable coin back into the smart contract. And so if you have a stable coin that's counteracting inflation, then technically the value of your stable coin is going up and up and up. And so now your debt that you owe back is actually increasing. So there's some like weird like pieces of making these synthetic assets where you have to try to balance kind of the stability features with the inflation hedge features, where you probably don't want to go too strong one direction or the other. And it's really, it's kind of a brand new paradigm that I think we'll see more of in the next decade. Like we're at the earliest stages with people building out these experimental, partially stable, partially inflation hedge assets, and Silk falls in that category. Now, so you have basket of global currencies and commodities. We also have privacy. So Frax and DAI are not private by default with their transactional history. Silk is. That being said, you can always move Silk off of a secret network to a public blockchain, but Silk is private by default as opposed to public by default. So that's another difference with IST and CMST. And then separate from that, it's also the over-collateralization mechanism and how you handle liquidations. A lot of protocols have like subtle differences between them. We're very similar to MakerDAO on this front, but the liquidation queue is democratized, where if you're deposited into something called the Silk Earn Pool, you're turning in your Silk as people get liquidated on the borrowing product in return for those discounted liquidated assets. And those assets get equally distributed to everyone in the pool, versus other liquidation protocols tied to these over-collateralized stable coins. It's kind of like a first come, first serve, like who's fastest. So yeah, we've democratized the stability pool, which is definitely a cool innovation. Other people have done this too, but we definitely aspire and agree with that kind of philosophy.
Okay, got it.
Oh, and the private liquidation price points. That's like another huge one, right? Like every single public blockchain. Like let's go to the borrow page. Let's give an example, Mike. So these are all the different vaults. You can lock up these different assets to mint out Silk. We're adding in support for a multitude of other assets, but these are the first 5 we started with. And you also notice that there's USDT and USDC. As I mentioned earlier with Operation Touch and Go, eventually the amount of backing from centralized assets will go down to 0%. Currently, they're at 40%. So over the course of that 5 years, there's going to be a decrease in those vaults and an ever continuing increase in decentralized vaults. This is an intentional bootstrapping decision, just to reference that right out of the gate. But you can essentially lock up, click on the stake secret vault, Mike, lock up your assets, mint out Silk, and you essentially get to pick your loan to value ratio. So the more aggressive of a loan to value ratio you pick, the more likely you are to get liquidated if the value of your assets decrease. And so this is true for all of these lending protocols, but the difference is that on these other protocols, everyone knows what Mike's liquidation price point is. I can know, hey, if the price of stake secret, if I can shift an oracle or shift a price, I can guarantee that Mike gets liquidated because all this information is just publicly available. But on Shade Lend with Silk, that metadata is private. And so whether you're a massive whale or a very small user, you can trust that no one's able to hunt your liquidation price point.
That's key.
Yeah, for sure. This is really just scratching the surface. Like Carter mentioned, like this has been out for just about almost exactly a month now. So this is super, super exciting for everyone involved, especially for the Cosmos ecosystem. I think a lot of the demand that we're seeing is that people want to hold Atom, and they want to hold the most efficient form of Atom, which is the liquid staking derivative version of it. And even with doing so, they want to unlock more liquidity out of it. And thankfully, Shade Protocol, Shade Lend allows people to put up these staking derivatives as collateral and mint out more Silk from there. So, on top of all those benefits that Carter was mentioning earlier about Silk compared to IST and these other stablecoin competitors, the beauty of having interconnected applications is that we can be a little bit more biased towards applications within Shade Protocol. And by bias, I mean Silk, like you saw, is a centerpiece routing asset for all liquidity. So this is really key because now users can unlock liquidity, take their loan, do whatever they want with it, quite honestly. But if they did want to trade or provide liquidity with that loan of Silk, This is a very liquid asset now that people can use, and liquidity providers don't have to worry about kind of getting routed through this governance token that's volatile and they're going to get affected by impermanence loss. In this scenario, it is a stable coin, and just by holding it, it's a hedge against inflation and really, single monetary systems.
Okay, so let's walk through an example user flow. Let's say I have Atom and I go to Stride and create ST Atom. I bridge that over to Shade Protocol, and then I collateralize that to borrow Silk. Now I have Silk, and I buy Osmo. Let's say if I want to use my Atom to get exposure to Osmo, and then I bridge that out to Stride and then get ST Osmo. And then I take Osmo, ST Osmo into Osmosis and then farm that pool. That's an entirely possible user flow that we could do right now.
It's not only entirely possible, but we're seeing around, if not better rates than actually going to the Stride application and getting that liquid staking derivative. So you could do that essentially all that exact user story completely from here. And the only part that you would actually be leaving Shade Protocol is that last part where you're saying you want to bridge to Osmosis to provide liquidity.
Because buying ST Osmo with Osmo, because the curve is so efficient, it's actually more efficient to perform that trade to buy the ST Osmo than it is to mint it on Stride.
Understood. That is key.
Yeah, for sure. And we are releasing some other features as well as we continue forward. But I don't know, Carter, if I should leak some of this stuff, but you'll be able to do a lot more utility between these applications. I would say probably in the next coming weeks.
Yes, there's definitely going to be more interesting pools, more interesting routing, and then more interesting collateral types. I think we can be pretty.
Is there something? Can you be more specific?
Yeah, I'll be more specific and say that like a huge way to unlock a lot of liquidity is like supporting LP tokens, for instance, as collateral for Silk. So then you can lock up, as an LP provider, you come in and then you lock it up as collateral, you mint out Silk, and it's like, this is called leverage liquidity providing. There's also something called leverage staking, which is the loop that you somewhat described, which is like, I take ST Atom, I lock it up, I mint out Silk, I buy more ST Atom, and then I lock up that ST Atom, mint out Silk, and you can loop as much exposure as you want. Granted, you're taking on an increasing amount of risk, but now you're getting more exposure to Atom, and you're getting more staking exposure to Atom too. So we're really going to be helping facilitate essentially financial expression, people being able to do what they want with their assets and express their convictions on different assets.
Fair enough. That's great.
Mike, I'd say another good one to mention would be, let's do the staking derivative quick, just because I feel like it's like one of the best kept secrets of Shade Protocol. So Shade Protocol actually launched the largest private staking derivative last year in March. So this has existed for 1 year and 2 months. And essentially, this accounts for 3.5% of all bonded secret on Secret Network is tied to the Shade Protocol staking derivative. These are fees that go back to the Shade DAO, just like trading fees from ShadeSwap. There's a percentage of those fees that go back to the Shade DAO, the interest fees, liquidation fees, percentage of that goes back to the Shade DAO. And yeah, the staking derivative is a really big product. It stakes to 23 different Secret Network validators based off of there's essentially like a neutral scoring card based off of uptime, commission rate, governance participation, and where you are in the decentralization stack. So we've actually seen Secret Network decentralization improve because of this, how this staking derivative delegates. So yeah, we can, when we work with our staking derivative partners, we come at it from we've actually launched a very successful staking derivative product before, which I think definitely helps us.
And how is it different from Stride's way of doing it?
Yes. So the biggest piece is the minting process is private, as well as the token. The token is private. It's also a smart contract on Secret Network, as opposed to Stride is a standalone blockchain that leverages interchain accounts to represent these different positions on the various blockchains. So there's advantages and disadvantages to this. Actually, we just had a Twitter space. Well, we've had a Twitter space with Persistence One and Quicksilver, since we're onboarding both of those staking derivative providers, and we actually talked about some of the trade-offs in security posture and latency and some other fascinating stuff. So check out the Shade Protocol Twitter. Check out those Twitter spaces in the last 2 to 3 days. There's some interesting conversations there about that.
Gotcha. So just a last note about taxes. If everything is private, how does someone report on these transactions?
Yes. So right now there's an app called Crypto Clerk that essentially just helps you use your viewing keys in a way to see all the timestamps, to see amounts for all your different trades and for all your different transactions. Shade Protocol is also going to be looking to add in CSV support on our app. So eventually picture another tab on the left side that just says CSV or transactions, and the goal will be a one-click download into spreadsheet format that totally formats all that stuff for you. So as a user, you don't have to try to hunt through a block explorer or go to a different website and all that nightmare stuff. So we've heard from at least, I mean, it's got to be 50 plus users over the course of the last half year that like everyone brings it up at some point of like, wow, this is like really cool, but is this going to make compliance more difficult? And it's like not. I mean, the tooling is going to continue to improve, and our goal is that like you don't have to worry about the privacy piece. It's all there for you.
Got it. Is there some last feature that you want to showcase before we go to the comment section?
I guess the last thing I'd say is Shade Staking is going to be launching very, very soon. So we actually, a lot of protocols, they're very focused on kind of the tokenomics and the staking before there's actually like a flywheel to plug into. But we went the opposite direction. We spent a year and a half to 2 years building out this incredible platform. I would say it's pretty good UI UX. It's got to be on the better side of things in crypto in general, with all the features. And now we have all these significant fee streams, right? To list them off, you have your staking derivative fees. We have protocol-owned liquidity through bonds, protocol-owned staking. We have trading fees from ShadeSwap, interest fees, liquidation fees, and borrowing fees. So I think that's 7 fee streams, right? And once staking goes live, we're actually unveiling something. We're going to talk more about it on this video today, but we're unveiling something called the Meta Engine, which is essentially our roadmap for how the protocol is going to build permanent sustainability and how value flows back to stakers, which they're providing a very important service because they're preventing against 51% attacks in terms of governance, right? So stakers do provide a legitimate service, and we're pumped to get staking out the door in the next couple weeks for all the people that have held Shade without direct utility necessarily right out of the gates, and now there's going to be more of a usage for Shade.
Is it 51% attack for a secret, or is it 66 since they use Tendermint?
Actually, you're right. 66 is the preferred number. So we're an application. This is a fun little paradigm to think about. Proof of stake protects everyone's ledgers, right? So it's like you got to make sure someone can't hijack consensus. So they say that Mike sends me all of his money, right? We're an app. We're a set of apps built on top of Secret Network. So our 66% staking protection is to make sure that someone couldn't hijack Shade Protocol app governance and do something nefarious within this set of apps on top of Secret. But yes, 66%. That was a slip up on my part. That's definitely the preferred protection amount with consensus.
Okay, and we're going into the comments section. We have someone screaming at the top of their lungs. Android app, please. Neutral position says 90% of internet users don't have a PC. PC days are over. Please, Android app.
This is true. So actually, fun facts. We have, in this other room over here, we have the mobile mock-ups are essentially in progress / getting close to done. And then it's going to be the front end team kind of implementing the changes to allow for mobile. So yeah, we definitely went desktop power user side of things, but it is time to head towards mobile compatibility. And yes, do we want there to be a standalone Shade app? 100%. That would be the dream. I don't know if that's going to be a 2023 roadmap item, but mobile compatibility definitely is.
And we have Riaz Ahmed Patel asking, when might we see Cosmos wide private liquid staking derivatives?
Yes, Riaz is a big Shade Protocol fan. He's been pushing for staking derivatives, not just for Secret Network, but private staking derivatives across the board. That's a good question, Mike. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Nothing. All I can say is come over to Shade Protocol and use it. That's where private liquid staking derivatives are. Outside of that, if you're asking like, is Shade Protocol right now going to create these Cosmos-wide liquid staking derivatives? Right now, no, that's not on the roadmap, at least near term. But yeah, if you want to use liquid staking derivatives with privacy, come over to Shade Protocol. We already have them.
I will say we've looked into providing potentially a grant for extending out the Stake Secret suite beyond just Secret Network, but we're still trying to find the right team and right fit for that in terms of the roadmap.
IBCX just launched, but it doesn't have privacy preserving features, but it's supposed to be an index of Cosmos assets. So that's also in the works. Mirko Horn said shade value accrual is too vague, but that changes today.
It does.
Because you guys shit all the alpha. Good job.
Yes, the blog post is going out like right now. So
most excellent. Alejandro says, I started to DCA into it as soon as I knew what they were doing. Hope it pays off. Yeah, and that's a wrap from the comments section. Actually, there's one more that just came in. Mirko Horn asks, does bounded conversion minting have something to do with the meta engine?
Wow, look at all the nomenclature. No, so the meta engine is essentially the theory of sustainability and growth for Shade Protocol from here on out, and how all the different fee streams build out that sustainability and give back to stakers. So hopefully that helps answer your question, Mirko. Be sure to check out the blog when it comes out, hopefully in the next couple minutes.
Riaz asks, does Shade have any plans to make a generalized money market?
Yes.
Olaf asks, when airdrop, will it be vested or fully claimable?
So airdrop, we joke we have like the world's slowest airdrop at this point. The first 30% was given in tasks 1 and 2, and the final 70% is coming with the launch of Shade staking in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that. And yes, it'll be fully claimable on the spot for those of you who qualified for that back in end of 2021.
Yes. So I remember 2021 when you guys issued an airdrop, but it's like noticeably pretty small.
Yes, it was. Which in the grand scheme of things, now that the product suite is here, we want to waive the incentive to come back and see everything that's been built in the last year and a half. So that final 70% for those Atom whales or Luna whales as well, pre-collapse, like any of those people that want to go and get their 70%, they're going to roll up to a fully blown mature product suite. Where a lot of airdrops, you roll up to an app and it's like, I'm claiming my airdrop, but like, what does this token actually do? What is this product looks kind of janky. It's like, this is a mature app, and now anyone coming back is going to be very impressed, I think, by what's been built since at the end of 2021.
So when was the snapshot taken for this airdrop?
November 7th of 2021 to December 13th of 2021.
Okay, so what happens to new users then? Do they receive any airdrop?
No airdrop for new users. There will be a clawback period for all the unclaimed airdrops, and it'll be up to the community, up to internal discussion. Like, there could be more airdrops. It's not necessarily on the immediate roadmap, but if there's Stride, I know has continued to like re airdrop, and it's a really interesting strategy. So it might be something that gets looked into from the community.
Mirko asks, does it make sense to display average long-term value when potential liquidation hunters might use that?
Yes. So there's some of the macro statistics are important just so people know that there's macro stat solvency, or else there could be very big issues of like, is Silk collateralized? Like we don't know. It's a fair point though, in terms of correlation, how much correlation is there. It shouldn't, from my knowledge, after talk with the core devs, there shouldn't be much, but it's a good question, Mirko. We can look into that for you.
All right, excellent. I think that is it for the comment section. Are there any last housekeeping items that you two want to cover? You know, how
Just
do people
really
find
appreciate you having us on. I know that was a lot. I feel like me and Mike talked like a lot, but like really appreciate you letting us walk through the app and a lot of the complexity. And I hope the audience learned something new. And if you're excited about privacy and DeFi, like we'd love to just invite you into the community and try out the apps.
Yeah, and I just encourage everyone to just come over and try it out. Really, as you see in this like live demo, you can do a lot, and really the creativity comes down to you, the user.
Yeah, excellent. That was a fantastic demo, by the way. It does look like a fully mature app from what it looked like in 2021 when I checked it out. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on, and congratulations to our listeners who tuned in live to the Interchain Jam on Interchain FM. Again, tune in next week. We are publishing the content that we recorded during Consensus. So there's a lot of alpha to be leaked there. You can follow me on Chango and Chain's YouTube channel. Or we also syndicate this content directly to the Interchain YouTube and the Cosmos Twitter channel. So you could find all of this content readily accessible as long as you are an alpha seeker. So congratulations. I know you are. All right. See you later.
Have a good one, guys.